What if everything you've been taught about success is backwards? What if the constant grinding, the endless chasing, the sleepless nights obsessing over your future, what if all of it is actually preventing you from experiencing the one thing that makes life worth living? Stay with me, because in the next few minutes, I'm going to show you something that will fundamentally shift how you see your entire existence. We live in a world obsessed with destination. Everyone around you is asking the same questions. Where are you going? What are you achieving? What's your 5-year plan? Your 10-year plan? What's your legacy? And if you don't have a clear answer, there's this underlying current of anxiety, this whisper that tells you you're falling behind, that you're wasting your potential, that you're not living up to your purpose. But here's the thing that nobody talks about. This entire framework is a trap, and most people spend their entire lives caught inside it. Think about your day. Really think about it. You wake up, and immediately your mind is somewhere else. You're thinking about the emails you need to send, the deadlines you need to meet, the person you need to impress. You're at breakfast, but you're not tasting your food. You're thinking about work. You're at work, but you're thinking about the promotion. You're getting the promotion, but now you're thinking about the next one. You're raising your kids, but you're not really present with them because you're worried about their future, about getting them into the right school, about setting them up for success. And then one day, maybe when you're 50, maybe when you're 70, you wake up and realize that your entire life has been spent preparing for a moment that never actually arrives. You've been reading a book so frantically, turning the pages so fast that you've missed every word. You've been so obsessed with the last page that you never actually read the story. This is the disease of modern life. We've been infected with what I call the virus of purposefulness. And it's everywhere. It's in our schools, in our workplaces, in our families, in our relationships. We're taught from childhood that your value as a human being is determined by what you accomplish. That your worth is tied to your productivity. That love is something you earn through achievement. That you have to be someone special to deserve to exist. And so we spend decades trying to become that someone. We collect credentials like they're Pokemon cards. We optimize our LinkedIn profiles. We curate our Instagram feeds. We tell ourselves a story about who we are and who we're becoming, the successful version of us. The version that finally has it all figured out. The version that will make our parents proud, that will impress our peers, that will finally feel like enough. But here's what I want you to understand. This version of you that you're trying to become, it's a fiction. It's a character you're playing. And the tragedy is that while you're playing this character so intensely, so desperately, you're missing the only reality that actually exists, which is right now, which is this moment, which is the feeling of air in your lungs, which is the person sitting across from you, which is the sound of rain, which is the taste of coffee, which is simply being alive. I'm not saying don't have goals. I'm not saying don't work hard. I'm not saying you should become this passive blob who does nothing and just watches Netflix all day. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is that you've confused the vehicle with the destination. You've confused the means with the end. And that confusion has cost you something precious. It's cost you your life. It's cost you the only thing you actually have, which is now. Let me tell you about something called the hedonic treadmill. It's a real psychological phenomenon. It means that no matter what you achieve, no matter how much you accomplish, you adapt to it. You get that promotion you've been dreaming about for years, and for maybe 2 weeks you feel great. And then your brain adapts, and suddenly it's normal. And now you're thinking about the next promotion. You get that dream house, and you're excited for a month, and then it's just your house. You get married to the person of your dreams, and the butterflies eventually fade, and now you're in a normal relationship dealing with normal conflicts. This is not pessimism. This is neuroscience. Your brain is literally wired to pursue, and then to reset. So if you're basing your happiness on achievement, on reaching goals, on becoming someone, you're on a never-ending treadmill. You're chasing a carrot that will never actually satisfy you because the satisfaction is not in the carrot. The satisfaction is in the chase. And once you catch the carrot, your brain immediately finds a new carrot to chase. So what's the alternative? How do you break free from this? The first thing you need to understand is that there are actually 2 completely different ways to live. There's the way of constant striving, which is what most people are doing. And then there's what the ancient philosophers called the way of acceptance. Not acceptance as in resignation. Not acceptance as in giving up, but acceptance as in recognizing what actually is, rather than constantly fighting with reality about what you wish it was. Look at nature. Really look at it. Look at a tree. Does a tree worry about whether it's a good tree? Does it stress about whether its leaves are the right shape? Does it stay up at night thinking about whether it's fulfilling its purpose? No. A tree is just a tree. It grows because that's what trees do. It doesn't strain. It doesn't force. It doesn't try. It simply expresses its nature. And in expressing its nature, it's perfect. It's exactly what it should be. A river doesn't worry about where it's going. It doesn't have a 5-year plan. It doesn't attend motivational seminars to become a better river. It simply flows. It finds the path of least resistance. It moves around obstacles instead of trying to destroy them. And in doing so, it accomplishes more than anything achieved through force. Over time, water can move mountains. Not through strength, through persistence and yielding. We've forgotten this. We've been taught that nature is something to be conquered, that the world is something to be dominated, that your life is a problem to be solved. But what if the opposite is true? What if life is not a problem to be solved, but a reality to be lived? What if the universe is not something you're separate from that you need to conquer, but something you're fundamentally part of? Think about the moments in your life that have actually felt meaningful. Not the moments you thought would feel meaningful, not the moments you planned, but the moments that actually did. When was the last time you experienced genuine presence, genuine joy, genuine peace? I'm willing to bet it wasn't when you were checking items off your to-do list. It wasn't when you were grinding toward your next goal. It was probably when you weren't thinking about any of that. It was probably when you were lost in something. When you were completely absorbed. When time stopped mattering because you were fully in the moment. Maybe it was playing music. Maybe it was having a conversation with someone you love, where you weren't thinking about anything else. You were just fully present with them. Maybe it was walking in nature and suddenly noticing something beautiful. A bird, a flower, the way light filtered through the trees. And for a moment your mind was completely quiet. Maybe it was creating something, not for an audience, not for recognition, but just for the joy of creating it. Maybe it was playing a game or a sport, where you were so absorbed that you forgot about yourself completely. Maybe it was just sitting quietly, doing nothing, and noticing that that was actually enough. These moments are not accidents. These moments are not interruptions in your real life. These moments are your real life. These are the moments when you're actually alive. These are the moments when you're actually experiencing existence rather than thinking about it. These are the moments when the mental narration stops and what remains is pure presence. And here's what most people do. They experience these moments and they feel guilty about them. They think, I should be working. I should be productive. I should be doing something that matters. I'm wasting time. And so they cut the moment short. They go back to their grind. They go back to their hustle. They go back to their purpose. And then they wonder why they feel empty. They wonder why they're depressed and anxious despite achieving things they thought would make them happy. This is the fundamental problem with the way we've been taught to live. We've been told that meaning comes from achievement, but it doesn't. Meaning comes from presence. Meaning comes from connection. Meaning comes from expressing what you are, and these things can't be achieved. They can only be accessed. Let me ask you something. Why do you work? Most people would say, because I need to make money. Because I need to support myself. Because I need to support my family. And that's true. But if I ask you why you need to make money, most people would say, so that I can be secure. So that I can have a good life. And if I ask why you want a good life, they might say, so that I can be happy. So that I can be at peace. So that I can enjoy my time. So that I can spend time with people I love doing things I love. And here's where it gets interesting. Because that's always the final answer. It's always about presence. It's always about experience. It's always about connection. It's always about joy. It's always about now. And yet, most people spend so much time preparing for that to happen in the future that they never actually access it in the present. You don't need to wait until you retire to enjoy your life. You don't need to reach a certain income level before you can be happy. You don't need to achieve a certain status before you can feel worthy. These are available to you right now, in this moment. But you have to be willing to shift your attention from where you're going to where you actually are. Now I know what you're thinking. But if I stop striving, if I stop trying to achieve, won't I become lazy? Won't I become unsuccessful? Won't I fall behind? And the answer is actually no. Because the irony is that this shift actually makes you more effective. not less. When you're not consumed with anxiety about your identity, when you're not constantly trying to prove something, when you're not running from a fear of inadequacy, you actually have more energy available for real work. You actually have more creativity available. You actually have more compassion available. You're not exhausted from constantly defending yourself. You're not depleted from constantly trying to become something. So you can actually pour yourself into what matters to you. A musician who plays for the love of music will eventually become better than a musician who plays to prove they're talented. An athlete who competes for the joy of the competition will eventually outperform an athlete who competes to feed their ego. A parent who is present and joyful will raise better children than a parent who is stressed and anxious about whether they're doing it right. A person who works because the work is there to be done will accomplish more than a person who works to build an identity as a successful person. The secret is that when you stop doing things for an external purpose, when you stop doing things to become someone, you actually do them better. Because you're present. Because you're not divided. Because all of your energy is in the moment instead of split between the moment and some imagined future version of yourself. There's a concept from ancient philosophy called wu-wei. It's often translated as non-action or effortless action. And it doesn't mean doing nothing. It means acting without strain. It means aligning your action with what actually is, with the situation as it actually is, rather than trying to force reality to conform to your will. It's like the example of water. Water doesn't push against rock. Water doesn't get frustrated. Water simply yields, and in yielding, it accomplishes what force never could. When you align with what actually is, when you accept reality rather than fighting it, when you work with life rather than against it, things flow, things work. This is not mystical. This is practical. This is how nature works. This is how life works. So how do you actually implement this? How do you actually shift from a life of constant striving to a life of presence? The first step is awareness. You have to notice the pattern. You have to catch yourself in the act of not being present. You have to notice the moments when your mind is somewhere else. When you're eating but not tasting. When you're with someone but not really with them. When you're working but resenting it instead of being in it. You have to notice how often you're actually here, and you might be surprised. You might realize that you're almost never here. That your mind is almost always somewhere else. Somewhere in the past thinking about something you did wrong or wishing you'd done something different. Somewhere in the future worrying about what's coming next or fantasizing about what might happen. But almost never right here in this moment where the actual reality is. The second step is to practice coming back, and it's just that, a practice. Not something you do once and then you've got it figured out. But something you return to again and again. You're eating, you notice your mind has wandered and you bring your attention back to the food. You're with someone you love, you notice you're thinking about your to-do list, and you bring your attention back to their face, their voice, the actual person in front of you. You're working, and you notice you're anxious about whether you're doing a good job, and you bring your attention back to the work itself. This simple act of returning your attention again and again is the entire practice. It's called meditation in the formal sense. But in a more practical sense, it's just being conscious. It's just waking up. The third step is to begin to question the stories you've been told. Question whether achievement actually makes you happy. Question whether proving yourself to others actually feels good. Question whether being busy is the same as being alive. Question whether your worth as a human being is actually tied to your productivity. Question these things not intellectually, but by observing your own experience. Look at your own life and see what actually makes you feel alive, actually makes you feel at peace, actually makes you feel connected. And I think you'll find that it's rarely what you thought it would be. And the fourth step is permission. You have to give yourself permission to live differently, to not be constantly proving something, to not be constantly becoming, to not be constantly at war with yourself about whether you're doing enough, to actually be okay with who you are right now. Not in some spiritual bypassing way where you tell yourself everything is perfect and you don't do anything about your situation, but in a real way where you can work on your life, you can pursue your goals, you can grow and develop, but you're doing it from a place of fullness rather than from a place of lack. You're doing it because something matters to you, not because you're running from fear. This is a completely different energy. This is what people feel when they're around someone who's grounded, someone who's not needy, someone who's not constantly seeking validation. There's a peace about them. There's a solidity. There's an authenticity. And it's attractive. It's powerful. It's the opposite of someone who's constantly striving and anxious and trying to prove themselves. But here's the thing that everyone gets stuck on. They think, okay, I understand this intellectually. I understand that presence is important. I understand that I shouldn't live for some future moment. But how do I actually do it when I have bills to pay? When I have responsibilities? When I have real pressures in my life? And this is where most teachings fall apart because they don't actually address this practical reality. Here's the truth. You can be present and responsible. You can be accepting of what is and still take action to change things. You can stop living for some future version of yourself and still work toward goals that matter to you. These are not contradictory. In fact, the most effective, the most creative, the most resilient people are those who can hold both. They can work hard and not be attached to the outcome. They can pursue their goals and still be at peace. They can engage fully in their life and still not take it so seriously that they can't find humor in it. Let me give you a concrete example. Say you're going through a difficult time at work. Your boss is demanding, the deadlines are tight, there's conflict with your coworkers. You're stressed, you're anxious, you're not sleeping well. This is real. This is not something that presence or acceptance can magically make go away. But here's what presence can do. It can change your relationship to it. When you're fully in the moment, when you're not divided between now and some imagined future where things are better, you can actually deal with it more effectively. You can think more clearly. You're not wasting energy on anxiety about what might happen. That energy is available for actually solving problems. And when the work is done for the day, you can actually let it go. You can actually leave it at the office instead of carrying it home with you in your mind and your body. This is not magical thinking. This is neuroscience. When you stop activating your stress response over and over again through constant worry, your body actually recovers. Your nervous system actually regulates. You actually have more resilience. You actually have more capacity to handle difficulties. And here's another thing that's important to understand. Accepting what is doesn't mean being passive about it. There's a difference between acceptance and resignation. Acceptance means you're not in denial about the situation. You're not pretending it's different than it is. You're not wasting energy wishing things were other than they are. You're seeing clearly. And from that place of clear seeing, you can take action, effective action. Aligned action, it's like martial arts. A good martial artist doesn't resist their opponent's force. They accept it and redirect it. They work with it. So they're more effective than someone who meets force with force. This is wu-wei. This is aligned action. So how does this change your life practically? How does this change your day-to-day experience? Well, it changes everything actually. Because you start to notice that a lot of what you thought you had to do, you didn't actually have to do. A lot of the pressure you thought was necessary wasn't actually necessary. You were putting it on yourself. You were the one who decided that you needed to be a certain way, achieve certain things, have certain possessions to be valuable. And you were the one maintaining that pressure by constantly judging yourself against your own internal standards. And those standards, by the way, are not even your own. They're mostly internalized from your parents, from your culture, from social media, from 1,000 external sources. You've made them your own, but they're not actually yours. When you start to see this, when you start to question these inherited standards, you start to have choices. You start to ask yourself, do I actually want this? Or is this just what I thought I was supposed to want? Do I actually care what this person thinks? Or am I just reacting to a fear I picked up as a kid? Do I actually need this achievement? Or am I just trying to fill a hole that probably can't be filled through achievement? And here's what's interesting. When you start asking these questions, your life often gets simpler. Not in a bad way, but you drop a lot of things that were never actually important to you. You let go of a lot of pressure that was never actually necessary. And somehow, paradoxically, you often end up more successful. Not because you're trying harder, but because you're trying smarter. You're investing your energy in things that actually matter to you rather than diffusing your energy across 1,000 things you thought you should care about. You start to develop real relationships instead of networking. You start to create real work instead of performing labor. You start to live real life instead of performing a life for an imaginary audience. And this is when things get really interesting. Because this is when you start to experience what it actually means to be alive. Not in some new age spiritual way, but in a practical, embodied, everyday way. You taste your food more. Conversations feel deeper. Work feels more meaningful. Your body feels better. Your mind feels clearer. You have more energy. You sleep better. Not because you did anything special, but because you stopped wasting so much of your resources on internal conflict. There's a term for this state of being: flow. It's when you're so absorbed in what you're doing that time disappears, that self-consciousness disappears, that the gap between you and the activity disappears. This is when humans are actually performing at their best. This is when creativity happens. This is when real work gets done. And here's the thing: you can't force flow. You can't achieve it through striving. It only happens when you let go of the need to achieve it. When you stop thinking about whether you're in flow and you just become absorbed in what you're doing. This is true of happiness too. You can't achieve happiness. You can only stop blocking it. You only stop blocking it when you stop trying to be happy and you start actually experiencing your life. And here's the counterintuitive part. When you stop making happiness your goal, when you stop trying to be happy, you often become happier. Because you're not constantly evaluating your experience against some ideal state of happiness. You're just experiencing what is. And what is, when you're fully in it, when you're fully present to it, is actually pretty good. Not always pleasant. Not always comfortable. Life is difficult sometimes. Life is painful sometimes. But when you're not adding the secondary suffering of wishing it were different, when you're not adding the suffering of self-judgment about whether you're handling it right, what remains is often tolerable, often interesting, often even beautiful in its own way. The Japanese have a concept called wabi-sabi. It's the beauty in imperfection, the beauty in incompleteness, the beauty in impermanence. It's finding aesthetic and spiritual value in things that are broken, that are imperfect, that are aging, that are transient. And this is a completely different way of relating to life than what we've been taught in the West, which is that everything should be optimized, perfected, made permanent, made special. The way of wabi-sabi is to find beauty in things exactly as they are, in the cracks, in the simplicity, in the ordinariness. And this changes everything, because you stop waiting for your life to be perfect before you can enjoy it. You stop waiting for yourself to be perfect before you can accept yourself. You stop waiting for circumstances to be ideal before you can be at peace. You start to find richness in what's actually here. And what's actually here is enough. I want to tell you about the concept of the eternal now. This is something that mystics and philosophers have been pointing to for thousands of years. The idea that the only moment that actually exists is this one. The past is a memory. The future is an imagination. The only reality is now. And yet, most people spend almost no time actually in the now. We're either ruminating about the past or anxious about the future. And in doing so, we're actually not present for our life. We're experiencing a memory of our life or an imagination of our life, but not the actual life itself. And here's what's wild. When you actually shift your attention to the now, even if just for a few moments, you realize something. You realize that right now, in this moment, almost everything is actually okay. Your bills might be stressful, but right now you're okay. You might be worried about something in the future, but right now nothing bad is happening. There might be pain in your body, but there's also sensation. There might be sadness, but there's also the feeling of being alive. The mind has this incredible ability to create suffering through imagination. But right now, if you really look, you're usually okay. And when you realize this, when you actually feel this, the anxiety starts to dissolve. Not because you're denying that real challenges exist, but because you're not creating an extra layer of suffering on top of those challenges through constant worry and catastrophizing. So here's what I want to leave you with. And I want you to actually hear this, not just think about it intellectually. You have been trained your entire life to believe that your worth comes from what you accomplish, that you have to earn the right to exist, that you have to become someone special to deserve love, respect, acceptance. This is false. This is a lie that was taught to you, probably by people who were taught the same lie and had no idea it was a lie. The truth is that you have inherent worth, just by existing. You don't have to prove anything. You don't have to accomplish anything. You don't have to become anyone. You are already enough, not in some fluffy spiritual way, but in a real, grounded, practical way. Your existence itself is the point. Your experience itself is the point. Your being is the point. And from that understanding, action flows. But it's different action. It's not desperate action. It's not anxious action. It's not action motivated by fear and insecurity. It's action that flows naturally from what you care about, from what matters to you, from what you're genuinely interested in. This action is often more effective. It's often more creative. It's often more sustainable. Because it's not driven by the need to prove yourself. It's driven by genuine interest and care. So my invitation to you is this. For just one day, try something different. Try to be present for one day. Not perfect. Not all day. But just practice coming back to now. Notice when your mind wanders and gently bring it back. Notice how often you're actually here. Notice what happens when you are. Notice how different things feel when you're present to them rather than thinking about them. Notice how your food tastes when you're actually tasting it. Notice how different a conversation feels when you're actually listening instead of planning what you're going to say next. Notice how work feels when you're actually absorbed in it rather than anxious about whether you're doing it right. Just notice. That's all. Just wake up for one day and see what happens. And then maybe try it for 2 days. And then maybe it becomes a practice. And then maybe it becomes your life. And then maybe you realize that you've been looking for happiness and meaning and peace in all the wrong places. And they were always right here. In the now, in the presence, in the simple fact of being alive. This is available to you, right now. Not in some future when you achieve your goals. Not in some other lifetime, but right now. All you have to do is pay attention. All you have to do is stop trying so hard to become someone and just be. Just be the person you already are. Just experience the life you're already living. Just pay attention to what's actually here. And when you do, everything changes. Not because your circumstances change, but because your relationship to your circumstances changes. And that changes everything. So I'm going to leave you with this question, and I want you to really sit with it. Not to answer it, but to feel into it. What would your life be like if you stopped trying to become someone and started actually being? What would be different? What would you do? How would you feel? Where would your attention go? What would matter? Who would you become by not trying to become anyone? Sit with that. And maybe the answer will surprise you. Maybe the answer will be exactly what you've been looking for all along.